thanks everybody for taking the time. And for those of you that are watching it on the recording, thank you very much. Thank you for answering the questions because it gave us a chance to get a sense of who's in the room. There is a lot of content that we're going to go through. So I'm sorry if it feels like kind of like fire hose, but really try to curate it and make this worth your while and your time. So thanks everybody. Trace?
Yeah, I want to echo that and thank you, Deja, for introducing us. And I'm looking forward to our conversation tonight.
Hang on, thanks. So ready to get started? All right, so let's get started. So from our side here, we're your friends from British Columbia. So certainly would like to acknowledge that I reside on the territory of the Nanaimo people. So that is Nanaimo, Vancouver Island. And Tracy?
And I'm located in the northern half of the province, up in the traditional territory of the Clayton Aitene people, also known as Prince George.
And certainly both of us cherish the privilege to live, work, and play on these lands. So the map there, it's an Indigenous map of British Columbia. People are a little bit curious of what that looks like. So overview, what are we going to be doing tonight? Context, the brain, mental health and addictions with regard to gaming disorder, risk and protective factors, likely going to skip the gaming world. You can investigate that on commonsensemedia.org, and strategies and support, because we have an hour and this is pretty much a 2-hour presentation that's getting squished in an hour. So let's see what we can get through. So these are the questions you were asked, and we're going to do our best to answer them throughout the course of the presentation. Around, from what we understand, most folks don't have a lot of experience with gaming, though it was peppered with a good maybe half a dozen folks that did. How we're going to handle the household and what you'd like to get out of tonight's masterclass. So here we go. Unlike popular belief sometimes, it is not only teenage boys that are gamers. Average age at 33, and this data is about 3-4 years old, 3-4 years old. 50-50-ish between men and women, average length of a gaming career about being 14 years, and taking a look at a little bit of the ethnic breakdown in the US, as well as the breakdown around folks that suffer from gaming disorder. And we'll get into a little bit more details of what those percentages are there, but just wanted to bust a little bit of myths that it's not only teenage boys playing Call of Duty that are the gamers. There's a little bit more to it than that. So in all fairness to gamers and non-gamers, what are the 5 E's of gaming? Why in the world do we game? I'll touch base on this. We'll touch base on this again at the end. But entertainment and excitement, fair enough. It's engaging. It's fun and social. Those of us that are older in here, we used to be popular if you had the 4 controllers to be able to have friends over. Well, now they're all on headsets and they're continuing the conversation loop during the day and in the evening. So their social time is very much bled into their chats and their social when they're gaming. There's the escapism when you want to tap out, whether you drink, drug, eat, or game when things are too much. That's one reason why people play. Economics. Some people want to be the pro gamers. Some people want the high profile. Some people are selling accounts, selling particular skins. So money is a piece of this, as is ego, the leaderboard chasers, right? Like, you want to feel good about yourself, and that's fair. Who doesn't want to feel good about themselves? So to get that recognition, that identity is fair. And these are all really fair reasons why people choose to game. So from the Intenta training, they classified gamers into 5 categories. And I'd say easily 85 to 95% of gamers are recreational or social. For the most part, most people can game most of the time in balance in their lives. However, some can't. So when we're using it to escape, when we're really locked down on achievement, and they use the term hardcore gamer to take people that have features of both escape and achiever, but I think that's a little bit under review right now. And that's how that got classified. So here, just for fun, if you feel like putting in the chat, can you name 3 video games? There's over 10,000 and counting. can you name 3 genres of games? Because we can think of, I, gave a little bit of hints so far. And are you familiar with the 3 platforms? Because some games you can only game on one platform, but more and more nowadays you can game on all 3. And the bonus round, I do this with the kids, because this is also part of this presentation I also do with you, is what are the 5 operating systems on console? The 3 platforms, right? We're looking at PC, right? Mac or PC. We're looking PC, mobile, and console. And a lot of games, Fortnite being the one that's taken out almost a generation, you can play on all 3. So maybe back in the day you couldn't play Fortnite at school, but you sure can now. This was a Google search. I do it every now and again, just out of morbid curiosity to see what's popular. GTA 6 is coming out, so apparently very gory. If I didn't have a full-time job, I would probably get lost in the new Zelda because the feedback is spectacular on how they've laid it out in the graphics. Of course, Super Mario Smash Brothers, Call of Duty, always popular, Minecraft and Roblox with the young ones. Dota 2, League of Legends is still hanging in there if you've got Twitch, Red Dead Redemption, things like that. And Fortnite won't go away. They did it right, and it's not going away anytime soon. So most of your kids, so what are we, 2023, so 2003, they'd be 20, so your kids, let's say about 15, so that would be 2008. If you take a look at this graph, that's roughly around the time where video games started to make more money than music and film combined. Your generation of kids, this is what they know. This is what they know. I'm in my early 50s. I go back a little bit on this, and it's been wild to watch the past 15, 20 years go by. And this only goes to 2021. I'd love to see in the hundreds of thousands of millions what we'd be looking at because of the COVID impact and how much money got made there. So benefits. Gaming's not all bad. You develop cognitive skills, you develop team skills, communication skills, military prep. This is where this started. First-person shooter games started with the military. Simulation training. I do not want to get into a Boeing 767 unless that pilot has done a lot of simulation training and a lot of certification. So gaming's not all bad, and it's a great opportunity to learn our digital citizenship. Tracy, do you have anything to add on the benefits of gaming?
I mean, I just maybe here is a good time to address the misconceptions about you hear a lot of people talking about want to being a pro gamer or esports and things like that, and I think with the misconceptions that are out there is that the kid's just going to be playing games all day every day, that's all they're going to do, and when we think about professional athletes, they are playing their sport of choice. They are having a healthy diet. They're getting enough sleep. They're doing exercises to increase their conditioning in terms of their body, whether it's reaction time, weightlifting, stamina, that kind of stuff. And that's the same for esports people, professional gamers. When these kids get scholarships into universities for esports, they're not playing all day. There's the well-roundedness of kind of being the esports athlete, I guess. I don't know if that's the term, and also a requirement to keep up with their academics. So I think when I hear the case of kids wanting to be a pro gamer, it's not all bad news. You could get an education from it, scholarships and all that. So I think that's something I just want to clarify.
Thanks, Tracy. Because it's not all good and all bad, right? So it's taking a look at that balance. So this video, it's really short videos. Interesting. This was done based on television. So when we want to take a look at the neurobiology in the brain a little bit, this is an interesting one to. Where's my little play button there? It's an interesting one to listen to.
I'm honestly freaked out by how much my son plays Fortnite. I actually played for like 12 hours straight. Definitely, it interferes with the amount of sleep I get. A lot of people play in school, even in the middle of class. This is what I see. Eyes down. They wake up and they just have to get right into it. It's a constant battle. One of the things that I love about Fortnite is that you can connect with your friends a lot easier. I like that it's a video game that you can play with your friends, even if they're not at your house. I really enjoy playing with my friends because we can laugh and make jokes and, you know, just share the same experience. I think that teamwork and communication skills are an important positive thing about Fortnite. It doesn't matter what console or platform they are on, as long as they are on Fortnite, you can play with them. It's pretty much still bonding, even though we're not in person. My daughter's Fortnite playing is a serious issue. It's like the #1 problem we have in the house. I think that Fortnite can get addicting if you play it too much. I have encountered people that are totally addicted to it, playing Fortnite at school. Try to sit down and do homework, and your buddies need a fourth, so you're gonna hop on it and help them win the match. I have not played Fortnite at school. There's not really a good way to play Fortnite at school.
I can't keep track. The games change in popularity. When I'm working with the kids, I ask them because I cannot keep up. I absolutely cannot keep up with what's most popular. So I think that this presentation may have been shifted a bit. So when we're taking a look at the brain, there it is. This is the video that I wanted to see. Love it. Excellent. Let's go to this one. It was when it was television. So this was just television. So take a look at our handheld devices, the technology, the graphics, and the pacing is, what was it? We have the attention span 1 second less than a goldfish nowadays. I think a goldfish has 9 seconds and we have 8 seconds. And when we take a look at our developmental stages, prefrontal cortex is always the last one to show up, right? It's the last one to develop. Here it says about 20. I think more recent literature is more around 25. Like we're delayed in our maturity, and I'm noticing it. I notice it with my clients. My friends who teach in college notice it. It's quite remarkable to see with our vulnerable kids in particular, the ones that might be on the spectrum, that might suffer from a little bit of ADHD or Asperger's or autism, that it's a slower. The faster pace of technology has slowed our development of our prefrontal cortex, and all of those beautiful skills about emotional regulation, decision making, problem solving, etc., are coming in a little bit later in the game. So this is going to be Dr. Victoria. Oops, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to add. So that video was around TV and its impact on the brain, basically around attention span, and I just want to highlight that it's not all doom and gloom. Yes, technology does have an impact on developing brains, but it doesn't mean that we can't heal from that. With neuroplasticity, it's about kind of how the brain repairs itself and how different areas of the brain take over for areas of the brain that maybe aren't functioning as well. And with that, there's a lot of hope, there's a lot of growth. And if, for instance, maybe you are working with a youth or have a youth that has a really short attention span because they're constantly watching TikTok videos or reels or something like that, we can improve from that. We can increase that attention span. So it's not all lost. There's hope.
There's absolutely hope, and that's a great segue to Dr. Victoria Dunkley here, who, if people really want to go more deep dive around the brain and repair in the brain and with young people. So she has a short video, and neuroplasticity is my favorite word, because if we couldn't change, what's the point? If we couldn't change, what's the point? So just to know there's hope. And where's Dr. Dunkley? There she is.
Digital addiction or tech addiction, screen addiction, all of those things have to do with the brain being overstimulated and in this high state of arousal when the person's using electronics. So whether it's video games or social media or internet use, all of those things have been shown to be addictive, and they all pretty much act the same way. When they do brain scans on adolescents that are addicted to video games and the internet, their brains have the same kinds of damage that alcohol, cocaine, heroin users have. And it's shrinkage of certain tissues, certain areas. And then there's also the white matter, which is how the brain connects to itself and to other parts of the body. There's missing areas of white matter. Digital addiction.
And what I like about neuroplasticity and hope is that we can change. And sometimes I find when I've worked with families in the past, because everyone's under so much stress, there's a lot of blame that gets tossed around. But in all fairness, a multi-billion-dollar industry knows how to hack our brains. So we have to double down in our efforts to be able to be knowledgeable about these things and know how to turn that tide and maximize our neuroplasticity to be able to make those positive changes. These are the 4 chemicals that pretty much run the show for all of us. So in short, our endorphins, the opiate of our brain, that I have this intense desire and craving. It's an intense urge. Norepinephrine, big word. I can't stop thinking about it. I can't stop thinking about it. I'm obsessed with it. Serotonin, I can't stop myself. And dopamine, of course, at the top of the pile. Even the kids can talk about dopamine detoxes and dopamine hits, about that rush. And what the gaming industry did really well is it took a page out of the gambling industry. But I'll go to the hacks because this is Tracy's specialty. And Tracy, go.
Well, and just to preface, I'm not a brain science expert, but I mean, in terms of video gaming and what it does with our brain chemicals, it gives us a rush of dopamine and serotonin, and basically that's one of the things that gets us hooked if we're playing a lot of games excessively, and by taking away the games, we're taking away the source of our serotonin and dopamine, and a lot of the times that could, lead to moodiness or a decreased mood, or, the impacts, the kind of the quote unquote withdrawal symptoms of removing gaming or technology. But all's not lost. We can get these neurochemicals activated in our brain again. And these are just some kind of hacks on how we can increase these neurochemicals in our brain without gaming. So I'll highlight serotonin and dopamine because those are the big ones when it comes to gaming. So dopamine is that reward chemical. And so anytime we're completing a level or kind of killing the big boss in a game, we get dopamine, a rush of dopamine. And so we can hack this by setting tasks where we complete. We get it from food as well. And celebrating wins, celebrating those successes in our lives. If we got a certain grade that we wanted, or, we made it on that sports team that we were trying out for. Now, serotonin, this is a mood stabilizer. So it's kind of to minimize the fluctuations in mood when we're experiencing emotions and things like that. And kind of how we can hack this is by kind of engaging in meditative practices, exercise, getting outside in the sun, kind of smelling fresh air, getting active essentially. And so these are just some tips to hack these brain chemicals.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And there's a lot of detail with some of the clinicians also in the US that Tracy and I have gotten to know and work with a little bit, Dr. Sussman and Ed Spector, around how to go into great detail with that. So any questions or comments at this time before we move on?
Yeah. Give me 1 second. Yeah, just comments. I had no idea there were university or college scholarships for video game players. Unbelievable. The skeptic in me wonders if it's sponsored by the gaming industry for marketing / incentives somehow. So that's just a comment.
Oh, I think there's a university in Windsor, is the first Canadian university to offer an esports scholarship So there's absolutely no different than with the gambling scene where you've got like DraftKings and FanDuel on college campuses in the US. And so there's a lot of work happening there, but esports is absolutely a thing. Go on Twitch and if just Google esports or esports scholarships and take a look at the different teams, and they sell out arenas in the 20, 30, 40, 50. If they're in like let's say BC play, so what's it called there, Canada, where the Jays play. You guys are in Toronto, so whatever it's called now, where the Jays play, they'll sell out a stadium that big, 100%. Absolutely, with tournaments.
Well, and as a aside as well, the Olympic Committee, whatever the official title is, they're thinking about putting esports in for the Summer Olympics. So it's big, it's lucrative, but there's no sign of stopping.
And it's likely, I think it is going to go through. I saw something like that. Thanks for bringing that up, Tracy. So I mean, I used to tease my husband that golf wasn't a sport. And then poker ended up on TSN. So things are going in a direction for at least my generation that I didn't see coming. So let's take a look at gaming disorder. Really apologize for the small print. King and Del Fabro are the leading academics, and Daria Cuss are the leading academics here. So gaming disorder, the World Health Organization, I believe it was in 2019, finally recognized gaming disorder in the ICD-11. The DSM-5, the American manual kind of came along a little bit later, but specifically for disorder, persistent or recurrent gaming behavior characterized by screen, go away. Whoops. It's the little Zoom thing I'm trying to make move. By an impaired control over gaming, increased priority when we start giving up other things, and gaming takes precedent over our other interests, and we continue in spite of negative consequences. And there's a subcategory for hazardous. Oops. The prevalence, depending on the meta-analysis, can be 1.2 to 8.5%. And that's around, for any academics in the room, it's around studies, criteria. Did they use the same criteria to do this study? Did they replicate it? Were there blind controls, et cetera, et cetera? So the range is about 1.2 to 8.5, but I think it's settled as more research is being done. It's settling around the 2-ish percent around gaming disorder prevalence, which is really similar to gambling disorder prevalence as well. So I always like to bring Dr. Mate with me everywhere I go, partly because it's really compassion based. And I like his 3 criteria around addiction, around craving, seeking pleasure, but honest to goodness, temporary pain relief, whether that pain is physical, emotional, or mental, and the inability to stop. Those are the 3 legs that hold up the stool of addiction. And to remind ourselves that addiction is an attempt to solve a problem. Nobody is trying to destroy the people they love on purpose. None of us are, and none of our kids are. So when we get into concurrent disorders here, and comorbidities for the clinicians, I think there was a couple of social workers or clinicians in the room. Tracy, do you want to take the lead on this?
Well, and it's there's the correlation or causation, and this is by no means causation, but oftentimes what we see is when, and I don't know about Ontario, but in BC there's rarely an official diagnosis of internet gaming disorder or gaming disorder. That just, it's too new and it hasn't come about yet. But oftentimes, at least in the work that I've done, when I've worked with families who have youth or a spouse engaged in problematic gaming or over gaming, a lot of the times I see a diagnosis of ADHD or depression or anxiety, and also I think you'll get into this, Karen, but the kind of risk factors of being neurodivergent, kind of being on the autism spectrum, it's kind of more prone to have a gaming disorder. But but by no means is it one cause the other.
And so much more vulnerable when we're on the spectrum, right? Because of that neurodivergence, it hits those bells and whistles. So an example that I can give is, in the virtual world, you have fixed and variable rewards when you're gaming. You have your fixed rewards, you follow your leaderboard, you know what your next task is, you know what map to go to, you know how many coins you need to get, you know what weapon you need, you know what enemies you need to destroy. It is very clear, and folks on the spectrum love clarity. So when things are clear and structured, that's a really comfortable place to be. The variable rewards, of course, that's the more the dopamine hit, and that side of it that kind of keeps us hooked in. So if anybody ever looked at Johan Hari's Rat Park and the study from Bruce Alexander around how addictions can be formed around intermittent rewards. So when you combine these two, for folks that are neurodivergent, being online and being in the virtual world is so much more comfortable, because if you fail, you can start again. You don't have to present yourself as you are. You can present yourself in another way. So there's a sense of safety that's felt being there. So Trace, anything to add before I go on?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. And this was a slide, I think was from an Ontario presentation from the Y. I need to update it, but it's just to really understand that variable rewards and random outcomes, and how we're basing decisions based on patterns that don't exist, right? So it does go with the gambling fallacy. And this is the link a little bit, especially when we get into loot boxes and player packs, that they're online slot machines. And the kids know it. The kids will absolutely know it. They're the one, yeah, it's an online slot machine. Okay, thanks. Betting skins, that's a whole other level, right? So for people who like that gambling portion of it, that like to go and purchase and open loot boxes and try and get those best players for player packs and bet their skins to try and get better ones, that profile does certainly fit with folks that might be at increased risk for a gambling disorder as well. So it's all these little criterias that go along with it. Anybody recognize this? What game? Let's go in the chat. There's got to be somebody in the chat that knows what game this is from. Deja, do we get it?
I actually don't.
No one's biting?
Oh my God, no one yet.
Okay, in 3, 2, 1, Overwatch, to which there are Overwatch leagues and teams. So when you take a look at the loot boxes, that's how many you can purchase. So it's kind of like how many scratch and wins you're purchasing. This is how many chances you're purchasing to get that item that you want. And I got to introduce, there's a little video. I didn't get a chance to put it in because I'd eat you guys up for 2 hours, but another little video of what that looks like when you open a loot box. Why I don't put it in is when I'm working with young people, or I'm working with people that are trying to recover from some gaming disorder, it's a trigger. So, but I need to learn to put it back in when I'm doing professional trainings, because that's a huge, huge trigger. So now we're going to look at risk factors and protective factors. So I will look at protective factors, but we're going to take a look at the risk factors, and they fall into 3 categories: individual, family, and community. So of course, our personality traits are a part of this, right? And our behaviors around what are some of those risk factors. So if we're impulsive, anxiety, poor sleep quality, high sensation seeking, I'm certainly on this list. I'm absolutely on this list. Playing in long blocks of time. This is where Cliff Sussman was talking about blocks when we're looking at coming for treating gaming disorder, about getting those low dopamine blocks of time and not allowing blocks of time to go too long, because then it takes that much longer to detox from that. Our family risk factors, and this is not in any way, shape, or form blaming. I am not a fan of blaming families. Our village is gone. Our supports are gone. We no longer have the supports that we used to have, and that's not people's fault. So I want to be really, 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 really clear about that. that we're overwhelmed, we're under-supported, we're under-resourced. And if, you know, back in the day, plopping me in front of the TV was a way to be a babysitter so my mom can get something done, or a parent that's got 2 jobs, of course, gaming is so much easier, especially on those handheld devices. Just as best as we can is avoid handing the phone over to the kid to be quiet when they're 2 and 3 years old, because every parent group I've run, that's probably the biggest regret that I hear from most parents, is they introduced the technology too young and then ended up struggling and backpedaling. And in all fairness, again, the industry got ahead of us and the horse is out of the barn, and COVID just threw fuel on the fire. The pandemic threw fuel on the fire. We were already on a trajectory and it exacerbated it. So please, no blame, no shame. We're all doing the best we can with what we have. And it's how do we get ourselves supported as best as we can. So when we take a look here at community risk factors, it's everywhere. I have the 5 A's somewhere on accessibility and availability, and it's everywhere. It's the norm. I remember I wanted a console. My mom's like, well, you're not getting one. What do you mean I'm not getting one? Everyone's got one. That's not fair. And I just had a hissy fit. And I'm not going to, you know, and the kids are doing the same thing. The difference is, being that I'm a pre-internet person, school was school and social was social. And that's not the case anymore. It's a 24/7 loop for them. It's a 24/7 loop. So the exclusionary practices of not being part of this group or that group is hard. And it's a much more challenging hill to climb. So when we look at the 5 A's of risk, age, the younger we are, and our prefrontal cortex hasn't shown up to the show. Availability everywhere. You hand your kid your old phone, did you scrub it clean? How clean is it? You might have done a great job, but maybe all the other kids in the classroom and their little friends, they're seeing it everywhere, and they're getting introduced to information that you can only titrate and control things so much in the house. It's acceptable. The schools are using it. It's part of who we are. The associations with mental health and addictions, and the access. Everything is one click and one tap away. It's so easy. What are we supposed to do? Well, let's take a look at our protective factors. Do you want to talk on risks, Tracy, or do you want me to keep going to protective?
I think you covered it.
Okay. So looking at protective factors, individual. Oddly enough, being a female is considered a protective factor. It's just, in terms of who falls to gaming disorder, the boys are more likely than the females. And part of it is I think the females tend to drift more around social media use. And then that's a rabbit hole. That's a whole other presentation for another day around social media and mental health and Instagram and all of that. But we don't have time for that today. A protective factor. Are you resilient? Do you bounce back from stuff? You know, positive social orientation. What are we involved in around ourselves? And our intelligence factor, like those are protective factors. If you have a smart kid, even on the spectrum, a smart kid is a smart kid, and they will be able to reason things through. It's finding ways on how do we have those conversations with our particular young people, because we're not all alike. Our family protective factors, you know, good relationships go a long way. Good relationships, being involved, paying attention, play the games with your kids. And some parents might be pulling the hair out of their head right now going, oh my God, I don't want to. But especially those of you that have the younger ones, or you still have younger ones at home, get into their world. They still want to share. Once you have your teenagers, they don't want to share anymore, but they still want to share when they're young. So continue, let them share. And what's super hard is around clear rules and consistency and boundaries and stuff like that, particularly in blended families, particularly in families that are split and the kids are going back and forth between mom and dads. It's so hard. It is so hard to be clear and be on the same page. But the more you can do that, the better it is for the kid. And it also shows good relationships and good negotiation skills that the kids get to see the parents use. when we take a look at protective factors in the community, you know, when we're doing strong academically, when we're on a team sports are awesome when we can do it. Being able to be involved in extracurricular activities and volunteer culturally. I'm fortunate that I'm surrounded by a fair amount of First Nations friends and people, and I rely on my elders. Let's get that multi-generational piece intact. Tracy, what would you like to add? What have I missed?
I mean, also, I guess a part of that protective factor in terms of community and family is just having communication. I think you might get into this later, but open communication, conversations where it's not focused on the, I guess, quote unquote, negative in a sense, instead of, you know, you've played for 6 hours today, you need to get off. Why aren't you logging off? I asked you to log off 5 minutes ago. Like these types of conversations, it comes with a negative tone. And I mean, we were all teens once. If a parent or someone was talking to you in that way, do you really want to talk to them? And so that shuts down the lines of communication. So it's about focusing on, you know, what's working. Oh, there we go, strategies and tips. So acknowledging the behaviors the positive behaviors or the behaviors of change that you want to see, and acknowledge that rather than focusing on what's missing, what they're not doing, and things like that.
Perfect. So what can we do, right? Strategies and tips. Of course, I mean, I appreciate that you're highlighting good communication, because that's good relationship skills, right? And it's so strong, because I don't want to be told what to do either. I think that's pretty natural amongst all of us. So this, when you take a look here, what can I do, right? Well, we start our education early. The minute, if the technological conversations and communication have to happen the minute they have the technology, and to take a look at the pros and cons. Now, for the ratings, this is a big one. A lot of times people disregard the ESRB ratings, but you can't, because the ratings are there for a reason. And also keep in mind that industry is rating them. So maybe my family, the industry might be okay with it, but I'm not, because of my values, my culture. So just because industry decided that it's appropriate doesn't mean that it is. That's your call as a parent. And when you see in-game purchases include random items, those are loot boxes, and that's gambling. And I remember when in the States they got brought to Congress and tried to talk their way up and around this, but we still don't have it regulated in Canada, certainly not in BC. I've spoken with my provincial representative about having this regulated to protect our children, and setting age-appropriate time and game limits. When you have one kid, that might be easier. But for those of you that have everything from a 5-year-old to the 22-year-old in the house, this gets challenging, because you have the different kids, the different limits, you know, trying to keep the devices out of the bedroom as much as possible, especially the handheld ones. Don't let them go to bed with their phones. I was giving my cousin the gears the other day, because this was the photo at my kitchen table with his kids that are 9 and 11. And I'm like, you know, you're going to fry on this in the long run, right? Like they don't listen to what we have to say, but they watch us. Oh my God, they watch us like hawks. They watch us. They're not going to listen, but they watch. So dinner time. Be consistent. And we've got to lead by example, folks. And that's where it hurts, because as adults, we've got to put our phone down. We've got to have boundaries. We've got to have time limits. And if we don't, they won't.
Well, and I think, Karen, also with the time limit piece, now there's who is it? Not Health Canada. Oh, the Canadian Pediatric Society. So they put out a recommendation about how much, and this is screen time as a whole. So this includes TV, cell phone, video games, tablet, like any technology. And basically, I think it's under 2 years old is 0 time. And then I don't remember the breakdown, but basically from 16 up to adulthood, it's a 2 hours max a day of screen time. So if let's, in a realistic sense, if you're watching a movie, you're done for the day. That's your 2 hours of screen time. You can't be on the, well, can't be on the phone, can't be on the computer. And so kind of looking at these recommendations, the recommendations, you have to know what works best for your own family. And, you know, some days you may be over, some days you might be under, but it's all about that balance. Kind of what I'm looking at, the plates of food in the image here. And, you know, it's a balance. Like for me, I love potato chips, and I could probably eat, you know, I don't know how many grams is it, but the big bag, the family size bag of chips, probably while I'm watching a movie. Now that is way more than a serving size and way more than the recommended amount. But at the same time, is that something that I'm doing every day all the time? Maybe it's once a week, maybe it's once every 2 weeks. And so I like to say everything in moderation, keeping everything in balance, and also recognizing what works best for your family.
Yeah, absolutely. And those guidelines, it's completely unrealistic for the 2 hours a day in the modern world. Look at Google Classroom, right? Like it's just eaten up. So how do we bring that in balance? It's a challenge, and it's going to be a different answer for each family. And you brought up the pro gamer piece before, so I don't need to go into too much detail with this, but it's no different than being a professional athlete. No athlete is working out and doing their game 24/7. My friend's boy that loves his weed. Yeah, I'm going to be a pro gamer, and he's got his YouTube channel, and yeah, he makes a couple of bucks off of it, but you're not going anywhere if you're blazing all day and you're up at night. Like it's not going to happen. You've got to have that balance in your life to have good sleep and good food and good nutrition and good balance with other things in your life. Even like in the hockey world, don't, you know, the ones that want their kids to play hockey and want to do really well will take a break in the spring and not play spring hockey. Maybe they'll play lacrosse, maybe they'll play ball in the summer. You can't always be doing the same thing constantly. So it's if they want to go pro, go pro. It's a legitimate thing. But how do you go pro, right? What are the things that you do for